There's also the fragile in Mary. Notice Mary's words. Guess what Mary's words are? Exactly the same as her sister's words. Now, I cannot understand why this is. I don't know if maybe Martha had been saying these words in the house. Why wasn't Jesus here? If Jesus had been here, our brother would not have died. Maybe they walked around for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days while he was sick and dying, and then when he was dead, saying this so often that when Mary finally sees Jesus, she puppets back the exact same words her sister, her strong sister, the one who was the first one to talk. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But I think there's something different that you have to feel in your soul when you hear what she says. I don't think she said it the same way her sister said it. I think when she said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, it sounded more like screaming and pleading and begging and humility. I'll tell you why. It's because her posture is different. Her tone and her posture, she's an emotional wreck. When she gets to Jesus, it says she falls down at his feet and she's weeping. And the other people around her are weeping. And they're watching what's going to happen. You see, she didn't stand over Jesus like a boss and try to tell him what to do. She didn't stand over him and try to make him feel guilty about why he didn't show up when she needed him. She just was a wreck. She didn't hold anything back. She just wrecked herself right at Jesus' feet. And it sounded more like, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. She's a mess. We see this 2 other times in her life. The only 2 other times we see her in the Gospels is when Jesus came over to their house for dinner. On one occasion when Martha was doing the, Lord, tell my sister to get in the kitchen and help me. Don't you care that I have to do all the work around the house and all the chores? When she said that, Mary was there, and she wasn't just sitting with Jesus, she was sitting at Jesus' feet. Maybe literally, but figuratively what that means is that she wanted Jesus to teach her and to talk to her and to tell her some things. And Jesus actually chastised Martha and says, Martha, Martha, you worry about way too much. Step off, your sister's chosen what's better. And I'm not going to take it away from her. In another gospel, in the Gospel of Luke, that was actually Luke, in the Gospel of John, the next chapter over after Lazarus comes back from the dead, they have Jesus over for dinner one more time, and guess where Mary is? Sitting at the feet of Jesus, but not just sitting there. She cracks open a vial of perfume, pours it all over his feet, and anoints his feet with this very expensive perfume. Now, does this woman have a foot thing, or what's her deal? 3 times with Jesus, 3 times at his feet. Maybe she's like penguins of Madagascar, you know, the little Morg. She's like Morg. She's got a foot thing for the king, right? No. She was humble. Her posture was such she wanted to learn from Jesus, and the place that students sat in their day and their time was at their teacher's feet. Their teacher would sit, put their feet out on the floor, and the students would sit sort of beneath their feet to show they were there to learn. That's why we raise platforms up like this one, is because it's a modern way of people standing up with their feet at almost your eye level to demonstrate somehow that they're of authority and they have something to say. It's kind of like when you go into the pharmacy. I've never been able to figure out why you go into those old school pharmacies and the pharmacist has to stand up above you to dispense your drugs. I don't get that, but maybe it's because he's the doctor and I'm not. I don't know. But nevertheless, there she is on the ground out in front of God and everybody, bawling her eyes out, screaming and hollering at Jesus. And Jesus doesn't offer her words. We're not given a bunch of words. He talks to Martha. He uses strong words with Martha, but not with Mary. Look at what he does with Mary. It says that he was deeply moved and troubled, and that he wept. And everybody saw it. What did she need? She didn't need words. She needed somebody to share her grief. And he did. She needed somebody to be fragile with her. And Jesus was both strong and fragile. There's this old song that I didn't like. El Shaddai. Everybody used to sing it when I was a kid. Amy Grant made it famous, you know, El Shaddai, El Shaddai, and it has a bunch of words nobody understands because they're in Hebrew and Aramaic and whatnot. There's a line in that song that I always just despised as a child and as a young person. It's this line. It says, "Your most awesome work was done in the frailty of your Son." I'm like, frailty of your Son? The second person of the Trinity who did miracles and raised people from the frailty? Frailty. Call down 10,000 angels and beat your frailty into nothingness. Talk to me about Jesus and his frailty. That was pretty ignorant. Because Jesus was fragile. He didn't take on the nature of a robot. He took on the nature of a human. Power wrapped up in a clay pot. He was strong for the strong, and he was fragile for the fragile. Strong and fragile. I remember on 9/11, the day of 9/11, being glued to the TV. And I remember at the end of the day, in the fog of all of our emotions, that George W. Bush, the President of the United States, had a press conference, and he did something that I have never seen another president do in my lifetime. He took an unscripted question and he gave an unscripted answer. Somebody yelled at him through the crowd of reporters as he got up from the press conference table, which was, I think, in an undisclosed location. It was very informal. And they said, Mr. President, what do you plan to do about all of this? And then he stopped for a second and very awkwardly said, "This will not stand." And he was crying. And I remember when I saw him do that, it scared me a little. But it also made me feel better that the most powerful man in the world felt the same thing I did. You need to know when you're fragile, Jesus feels the same thing you do. And he's the most powerful man in the universe. He's both fragile and strong. You know what I've learned this year from teaching some of you? I've learned about the strong and the fragile. Some of you are really strong, but every once in a while, I see that you're fragile too. You see, I don't think that there are strong people and fragile people. I think there are strong people that are fragile and fragile people that are strong. And depending on the day you catch them, they may be more or less one or the other. Let me tell you what I mean. I have seen the shame on the faces of A students when they bomb an assignment or a test. Strong and fragile. I have seen the tears of 8th grade boys who know they're going to lose their Xbox for a long time. Not naming any names. I have seen the battered bodies of strong athletes whose bones will break and whose ligaments will tear and whose skin can take a beating but need stitches. Strong, but fragile. And I've seen the injured feelings of students who are strong and sometimes very rambunctious and talkative and even rude. I've seen their hurt feelings when I lose my temper. Strong, but fragile. It surprises me, and I don't really know why, that it means so much to me. I find often that when I pray for you, I'm not strong, I'm fragile.